As another season of Aussie rules football passes us by, I thought I'd take a closer look at some of the numbers that drove not only the Brisbane Lions to the Premiership, but also the data that separated our preliminary finalists from the also-rans. Welcome to AFL Insight. For those of you who are familiar with some of my work, you would be getting used to seeing this chart. For the first-timers, the vertical axis measures efficiency, with the differential between the percentage of goals scored per inside 50 and goals conceded per defensive inside 50 calculated here. The horizontal axis measures inside 50 differential per game, giving us a simplified version of quality versus quantity. Now, every preliminary finalist since the turn of the century has been given a data point, with the premiers in gold, beaten grand finalists in orange, and beaten preliminary finalists with a grey data point. As you can see, every premier over the past 25 seasons has had a positive differential in inside 50s, with only the 2016 Dogs having a negative efficiency differential. 24 of our 25 beaten grand finalists also reside within the upper right quadrant of the graph, with the 2019 Giants the only side to reach a grand final with a negative inside 50 differential, and we all remember what happened to them on grand final day. So where did the 2025 version of our team sit? Well, our premiers once again sit within the upper right quadrant. Not quite as strong as last year, with similar efficiency measures, but slightly less inside 50s per game. When you consider the amount of injuries they had to overcome, combined with the youth of their squad, it really was a remarkable premiership victory. Their opponents on grand final day joined the Lions in the upper right quadrant, as did the Pies and Hawks. Another season and another year's worth of proof that if a team wants to be successful in September, then they must have the right mix of quality and quantity to become a serious threat. But if we dig a little deeper, we can find more proof of why the Lions were so strong this season. Anyone who was only half paying attention to this year's home and away season could tell you that there were 9 quality sides this year. 14 wins and a percentage of 130 would guarantee a top 6 finish in most seasons. But in this lopsided year of footy, it meant missing finals. So if we use the same parameters, but narrow our focus onto results against the top 9 teams only, every team would experience a significant decline, with our bottom 9 teams all shifting further to the bottom left of the chart. The Doggies showed why they were considered to be flat track bullies, moving from having one of the best models to outside of the window. The Giants were praised by many as premiership fancies, but their profile screamed pretender. Remembering that no premier this century has had a negative inside 50 differential, GWS finished the season at a -4 in this area, and against the top 9, that number doubled to -8. They were never a serious threat. The Dockers and Suns had a great home and away campaign, but again, their numbers against the other elite sides suggested that they were just not ready to launch a serious assault on the flag. Our minor premiers were knocked out in straight sets, and when you look to their data against the best of the best, you can see why. Have a look at the decline in their numbers against the top 9 teams. It's similar to the Giants' profile, and teams just don't win big finals from the left-hand side of the chart. Collingwood's efficiency on both offense and defense suffered against the best teams in 2025, as they moved from the top right quadrant into the bottom right section of the graph, whilst the other beaten preliminary finalists in the Hawks also moved down and left as they sat just outside the border of the premiership window. Which leaves just our grand finalists. The Cats had a similar decline as most of the other sides in the comp, but managed to maintain their place in the upper right quadrant, whilst the Lions had the smallest shift of all, maintaining their efficiency numbers amidst a small decline in inside 50 differential. It highlights just how consistent their method is, and that it holds up no matter the opponent or venue. The second set of numbers that stood out to me was intercept differential per game. Creating turnovers has become such a key component of the modern game, and in the 2025 final series, every victorious team won the intercept battle come game day. 9 games, 9 positive differentials for the winners. This next chart measures these intercept differentials and combines them with how effective a team is at scoring from these turnovers. The vertical axis measures scores from turnover differential per game, whilst the horizontal axis measures intercept differential per game. There were 5 teams who finished the season with a positive differential in both categories. No surprises here, our 4 prelim finalists sit comfortably within the upper right quadrant, as do our minor premiers in the Adelaide Crows. All of these teams are elite at setting up the ground defensively and then punishing on the rebound. Inconceivably, the Crows lost the intercept differential by a staggering 14 in both finals. We won't get our answer on whether it was a personnel or systemic issue until next September. The 4 other teams from the Big 9 this year all had positive differentials in scoring from turnover, but had a negative differential in creating turnovers. It is no surprise that they were not a real threat during September, and in the Dogs' case, missed the finals altogether. Which is why Kane Corns' call that the Dogs have the best list in football is so ridiculously stupid. All of the 8 teams that qualified for September have one key position defender ranked in the top 15 for intercept possessions. In the case of the Crows and Cats, they have 2. The Doggies don't have a player in the top 30, let alone the top 15, with Bailey Dale their highest ranked interceptor at AFL 31. No wonder they chase Cal Wilkie so hard, who ranks 16th in the comp. If your team doesn't have 1 or 2 elite interceptors, then you can kiss any dreams of September glory goodbye. This year I began measuring how efficient teams are in creating a turnover and converting it into a score, and how well they defend a turnover. Points per 100 intercepts calculates how well a team punishes their opponent once they gain an intercept. And points per 100 turnovers shows how well your team defends once a turnover has been created by the opposition. But once again, it is the differential between the two that I am more interested in. This chart shows us how well each team defends the turnover, and as we can see, every side that featured in September held their opposition to under 70 points per 100 turnovers, whilst the Pies, Hawks and Crows took it a step further and managed to hold their opponents to under 60 points. Some encouraging news for Blues fans is that they were actually better than the Cats at defending turnover throughout the season. This only tells one side of the story. How well teams can punish an opposition turnover is key, and this is where the Cats and Dogs were dominant, hammering teams to the tune of 90 plus points per 100 intercepts. What this chart also demonstrates is that whilst they may have been better at defending the turnover, beaten prelim finalists in the Hawks and Pies were inferior to their opponents at creating scores from their own intercepts. But like I mentioned earlier, what I'm most interested in is the differential between the two numbers. The Lions had a differential of plus 15.7, whilst the Cats had a positive difference of plus 21.6. At the other end of the scale, our cellar dwellers had numbers closer to negative 30. This data once again illustrates just how dominant the top 9 teams were, with all of them having a positive differential, with the latter leading Crows topping the differential margin with a plus 22.1. Predictably, the bottom 9 teams all registered a negative differential. But we all know that the Doggies weren't a better side than the Lions, despite the numbers indicating otherwise. So what happens if we once again isolate this data against matchups that only included the top 9 teams? We get a totally different story. It goes without saying that our bottom teams were worse off. But look at the Dons here. They went from a minus 5 goal differential to a negative 10 goal differential against the elite teams. The Ds were the only team that didn't have a significant decrease against the top 9 sides, which further strengthened Simon Goodwin's claim that the Demons had already turned the corner and were looking to climb back up the ladder. If we turn our attention to the top 9 teams, the data is vastly different. The Dogs again showed why they were flat track bullies, but the Dockers, Giants and Suns weren't much better. The Crows dropped 20 points, illustrating that they weren't quite ready for the big boys, whilst the Hawks, Pies and Cats all had drop-offs, with the Cats in particular having a 24-point swing to the negative. And then we get to the Lions, who hardly deviated at all, proving yet again that their game plan was rock solid, regardless of the conditions or the opponent. But as solid as the turnover data is, it meant very little come prelim final weekend, which brings us to our next key component, scoring from stoppage. During the 2025 home and away season, if a team won the scoring from turnover battle, 86% of the time they went on to win the game. When a top 9 team won the scores from turnover, they converted that dominance into a victory on a whopping 93% of occasions. The ability to capitalise on an intercept from an opposition mistake really has become the benchmark on how to win in the modern game. And this trend continued into the opening fortnight of the finals, with all 6 victors also winning the scores from turnover differential. The Hawks in particular were brutal, smashing the Giants by 36 in the elimination final, and then demolishing the Crows by 45 in week 2. But what happens when 4 pretty evenly matched defensive sides with great coaching, systems and methods face off, as was the case on preliminary final weekend? Well, we certainly got our answer, as contest, clearance and being able to score from these methods once again proved to be so vital when the lights were shining their brightest. The Cats won contest against the Hawks by 10, clearance by 17, and were plus 28 from stoppage scores, and just the plus 3 from scores from turnover. A complete and utter dominance in and around the ball. In the second prelim between the Lions and Pies, Brisbane were equally as impressive, winning contests by 14, clearance by 9, and were a plus 32 from stoppage scores. Collingwood won the scores from turnover, but just by plus 3. Clear evidence that for a team to even qualify for the grand final, that they had to have a well-balanced game that was equal parts effective in defending, attacking, and winning the ball at the coalface. If we zero in on around-the-ground clearance numbers across the season and remove centre bounce numbers, the Brisbane Lions were a clear number 1 in this key component of the game, with a positive differential of plus 5.1 per game. The next best was the Dogs at 2.9. The Lions' preliminary final opponents in Collingwood were AFL 16th with a negative 2.4 differential. The Hawks ranked 15th with a negative 2. And the grand final opponents in the Cats ranked 13th with a differential of negative 1.1. With this in mind, is it any surprise that the Lions were able to dominate the way they did on grand final day? On the biggest stage of all, the Lions won contest by 8, clearance by a whopping 15, which led to a plus 15 in inside 50s, and an unbelievable plus 44 from stoppage scores. Just for good measure, they also had 4 more intercepts than the Cats, and converted this into a plus 21 in the turnover game. So the lessons from these numbers are that having an elite turnover game is vital when it comes to qualifying for finals, and even winning them in the first few weeks of September. But to go all the way, a team really needs to have a brutal contest method that generates scores and puts the opposition defense under pressure across every facet of the game. Now, I've been hanging it on the Doggies for being flat track bullies throughout this video, but if we look at scores from stoppage across the season, they are so far in front in this aspect of the game that it's not funny. The Dogs were a plus 17.5 per game from stoppage scores in 2025. The next best team was a plus 9.9. They are a key interceptor and another small pressure forward away from being right up there in contention in 2026. Their ability to score at a rate of 108 points per game is second to none. Which leads me to my last observation, scoring. For so long, it was drilled into us from the coaches and media alike that defence wins premierships. In season 2025, we have witnessed that high scoring and attacking football is back in vogue. If you can't generate scores, you won't win. Gone are the days when holding a team to 60 points is the main tactic towards winning big finals. Teams have become lethal at finding angles and moving the ball at speed, and therefore not allowing the opposition to set up defensively. If we go back to just 2022, there were 3 finals games that featured a team scoring at least 100 points. In 2023, that number was just 2 matches. In 2024, we were back to 3 matches with at least one team scoring 100 points. In 2025, 7 of the 9 finals matches featured a team scoring at least 100 points, including both semi-finals, both prelims, and the grand final itself. From the 23-minute mark of the third quarter in the grand final, when Charlie Cameron goaled, until the 25-minute mark of the fourth quarter, when Hugh McCluggage scored, the Lions piled on 70 points to Geelong's 7. There is no way to stop their relentless forward pressure for 120 minutes of footy, and if you can't score back the other way, then you are dead in the water. So in summary, if you're looking for signs as to whether or not your team has improved next year, and whether they are actually on the path to contention, look to numbers that indicate whether your side has a method that generates enough inside 50s and converts those opportunities in an efficient manner. The Lions were number 1 in this area against the best 9 teams in the comp, who they had to face a staggering 17 times across the year. Look at how well your team intercepts the ball and converts those intercepts into scores. Brisbane ranked 2nd for intercept differential and 1st for scores from turnover differential against the top 9 sides. Dig a little deeper into those scores from turnover and look at how well your side defends and attacks the turnover against the best sides. The Lions ranked 1st for defending the turnover, allowing just 60.6 points per 100 turnovers, whilst ranking 2nd for points per 100 intercepts with 75.6 per game. Their differential of plus 15 was easily ranked number 1 across the comp. Look for positive differentials in contest, clearance, and scoring from stoppage. It might not prove to be essential in the jostling for top 8 and 4 positions, but it will most definitely be needed when the Premiership Cup is on the line. And lastly, look at whether your team can score. Only 3 teams averaged 85 plus points against the top 9 teams in 2025, and 2 of them made the grand final. The Lions have shown across the past 2 seasons that they have every aspect of their game in full working order. It wins plenty of home and away matches, but it also stacks up come finals time. They are now 9-2 in finals across the past 3 seasons. A remarkable record. It really is staggering that Brisbane lost games against Melbourne and Sydney at the Gabba and drew with the lowly Kangaroos during the home and away season. 1 more point from the Kangas and the Lions would have missed the top 4 and would have had to play the Hawks in an elimination final, whilst the Crows would have faced the Giants at home and the Cats and Pies would have been drawn to square off in the qualifying final. I still think the Lions would have won the whole thing, but September sure would have looked a lot different had the Kangas managed to find 1 more shot at goal. I've said it before and I'll say it again. The margins between these elite teams, and therefore the ultimate success, is razor thin. 1 missed free kick, 1 missed shot at goal, 1 lapse in concentration, 1 untimely injury, 1 moment of madness can change everything. What a season 2025 was. Let's hope 2026 is even better. And thanks as always for watching AFL Insight. If you like this sort of content, please be sure to like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.